Bill with Democratic Congressman from Maryland and House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer. He joins us from Statuary Hall. Steny, our Congressman, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. I know you've been tweeting about this, calling it hashtag GOP tax scam, so it's pretty clear where your intentions lay. The House bill is kind of a draft, as we were talking about, since it will have to be reconciled with the Senate version. The Senate version doesn't have a lot of room to spare because they can only afford to lose 2 votes there. So from where you sit, how much of a tax raise do you believe we're going to see versus a tax cut?
Well, I think we're more likely to see a tax cut. We certainly haven't seen tax reform at this point in time. And it is interesting when you talk about the Senate voted on the House bill. Unlike the House, where the Republicans voted for it, this House bill in the Senate Finance Committee lost 26-0. Not a single Republican senator voted for the House bill. So they may have had a victory today, but that was a Pyrrhic victory, and in my opinion, a loss for the American people. They say this is a tax cut bill. In point of fact, it raises taxes on 36 million middle-income families, working families in this country. It explodes the deficit by $1.5 trillion, and the people who are going to pay off that deficit are our children. So from that standpoint, this is not a good bill. It lost 26-0 in the Senate. I hope it fails. And very frankly, if we do tax reform, we ought to do it in a bipartisan fashion, which is what we did in 1986. We ought to have hearings. We ought to have witnesses. We ought to have the American public have an opportunity to come in and say how this is going to affect them. This bill is not a good bill for America. It's not a good bill for our citizens. And when you give 50% of the benefits, there was a lot of talk about helping middle-income people. Well, if you took $1.5 trillion and borrowed that money, and then you could put it on the table, if you want to help middle-income Americans, you give most of that money to middle-income Americans. So that's not what happens.
So, Congressman, it sounds like you do like the idea of giving a tax break to middle-income Americans. Given that approach, is there anything about the House bill that was passed today that you like?
The House bill is a hodgepodge of cobbled together efforts, but which primarily is focused on tax cuts for the wealthiest in America. As I said on the floor, I don't begrudge people being rich. I think most of us want to be rich. That's not the issue. The issue is if you're going to take $1.5 trillion and distribute that, which I frankly think we can't afford as a country, but if you could do that, you ought to give it to the people you say you want to benefit, not to the wealthiest in the country. And that's what happens under this bill. And very frankly, analyst after analyst after analyst says this bill will not pay for itself. It will explode the debt, and future generations are going to be put deeply in the hole.
The problem here, Congressman, is that the Republicans, I think, are viewing this as a need. They must do this in order to secure the midterms and keep the House and the Senate when we get to the midterm elections next year. I know you've said that you think the Republicans will actually lose the House when it comes to the midterms here. But do you see their point? And why do you think ultimately this could lead to them losing the House?
I'm glad you raised that issue because I think this bill was passed not for policy reasons, not because it was good tax policy or good reform policy. It was passed because the Republicans believe that if they don't pass this tax bill, they're going to lose the next election. My view is passing this tax bill will also lead to their losing the next election. This is a bad bill. It's bad for the middle class. It's bad for the country. It's bad for our children. And hopefully it's going to be defeated. But this was not passed on policy grounds. Very frankly, we could have done a bipartisan bill. We could have addressed the disparity in terms of the corporate rate with the rest of the world. We could have brought that rate down. As a matter of fact, President Obama suggested 3 years ago in the State of the Union bringing that rate down. We could have adjusted other taxes for the middle class, for working people, spurred job creation. But that's not what we did. And not only did we not do that, but we did it in a rushed fashion because, in my opinion, the Republicans understand that this bill will not bear analysis, that the honest people who look at this bill have said it will not grow the economy, it will explode the debt, and middle-class people, in many instances, will get a tax hike.
Congressman, a quick question for you here, and final question as well. There's a lot of criticism that the Democratic Party needs a refresh here, that you and Nancy Pelosi, some of the veterans, represent the old guard and perhaps should retire to make room for new blood. We've seen a lot of Republicans, for instance, retire or say that they're going to be retired. How do you respond to that?
I think the young guard on the Republican side just passed a very bad bill. The issue is not age, it is policy, it is how do you help people in America grow jobs and make it in America and get a better deal. Well, that's what we think we offer, and we're going to continue to offer that, and we think that will prevail.
Thank you so much. Thanks to Congressman Steny Hoyer, House Minority Whip. Coming up, we'll bring you an exclusive conversation with Forest City Ratner CEO Marianne Gilmartin. Her thoughts on how the GOP